this is Charles from IGN, and we're checking out the new Command & Conquer Generals 2 trailer. I'm here with Anthony Gallegos.
Hello.
And as you can see on this trailer here, this is actually a BioWare game. And if you're familiar with Command & Conquer, it is pretty much a real-time strategy series, so BioWare is now making real-time strategy games.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the BioWare label. It's still being developed by the guys that have known Command & Conquer for years. Down in, I think, in LA. So yeah, but now they are under the BioWare label.
Yeah, and it's interesting because BioWare is so big at this point that it's not really just an RPG house. It's apparently now an all things house because people do trust that brand. So they're evolving it a little bit. Also, Frostbite 2 is the engine the game is being made with, which powers, of course, Battlefield 3.
And Need for Speed The Run.
And what it's allegedly supposed to do in this game is allow for destructible environments, which should be pretty cool. You can see some of the visuals here, really impressive. For a real-time strategy game, this is supposed to be in-game footage.
It looks like a cutscene.
Yeah, this is extremely detailed. It may not be particularly colorful, but in terms of the actual fidelity, it's really good. So let's take a look at sort of what we're seeing here. First, the first Generals game was 3 factions. It was China versus the US versus the GLA, which is the Global Liberation Army, which is essentially the terrorist force. This game, Generals 2, will also have 3 factions. We know of the GLA, which you see here. You see their trucks called Technicals, which are basically machine gun jeeps that are really fast, that are good for scouting and stuff like that, and taking out infantry. You can see the machine gun on the top there. But the third faction, we don't actually know what it's going to be in this game. The other one that we see is actually the EU is the faction. It's not the US, although it seems to share some of the characteristics of the US. We see a tank rolling in here, which I think is a Paladin. It looks like a Paladin tank from the US forces in the original Generals.
Towards the end of the last game, though, it was clear, I think the United States was helping Europe, so it could be that they've all kind of gotten together at this point and sharing units. And
and I guess I should set up the plot. This is 10 years after the events of Generals, so there has been some evolution of global politics, I suppose. I think it would be likely that China would be the third faction. Yeah,
and 10 years later, in all likelihood, that could be a new tank that we're seeing too, a like Crusader Mark II or something like that.
Yeah, and just for additional detail, like the Paladin tank in the first game was sort of an advanced main tank of the U.S. forces. The U.S. forces in the first game were really expensive to buy, so you couldn't build up a huge army, but every unit was really useful, really powerful. And the GLA was more about numbers. They actually had suicide bombers. They had
a tractor that could shoot bioweapons.
Yeah, they had chemical weapons and stuff like that. And what you see here is a quad cannon. If I just go back here, which is good for anti-air and is good for anti-infantry. And anti-air is especially important against US/EU because in the first game the US had a very strong air force.
Yeah, and the GLA had none whatsoever.
They didn't have much. So here you see the tanks in combat sort of rolling back, and we get a look at some of the Air Force in this game. It looks like a new unit. It looks sort of like an Orca from other versions of Command & Conquer, which you see kind of hovering here, shooting rockets down on the field. But it's obviously not an Orca. Generals is a separate universe from Tiberium, from Red Alert. This has nothing to do with Kane or anything like that. It's a totally different thing. More of a real-world type of situation, even though it's still obviously a little bit exaggerated.
You don't get to see too much destruction in the game in this little tiny snippet, but you do see some awesome particle effects. I mean, just like Battlefield 3, the particle effects of the smoke trails and the explosions are crazy looking, and to have that on RTS is going to be pretty insane.
Yeah, again, if this is supposed to be in-game, if the requirements aren't insane, yeah, this is going to be one of the, if not the prettiest real-time strategy game available when it eventually comes out, which is supposedly 2013 at this point. I did want to point out here on the right of the screen, BioWare has said that this is sort of a back-to-basics approach with Command & Conquer. So if you played CNC4, you know they did sort of a mobile-based thing. It was a very strange kind of hybrid gameplay setup. You see on the right side there is a base there, so it looks like base building is very much a part of this game. It'll be more back to the traditional mechanics. They say they're trying to turn or bring CNC sort of back into the forefront of the competitive field, so it should be really interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, on their website they even say that it still has resource management and all that. They're definitely not abandoning resources or anything like some other RTS games have done.
Right, so I mean there was a while there where the RTS trends were sort of moving away from the core of RTS gameplay, which is the resource management and base building and army management. It's difficult to say at this point how big your armies can get in this game, although BioWare has said that they will be massive.
Which has been a staple of the Command & Conquer franchise for years.
So it sounds like, yeah, your actual army size will get pretty big. I mean, you don't see that here. These are all very small encounters, which is probably because they're still pretty early in this game. If it is a 2013 game, it's nice that we're actually getting footage at all. But yeah, in the final game, it sounds like the armies will get pretty big, which is especially important for GLA because they rely a lot on numbers, a lot of cheaply produced units. And yeah, if you didn't play the original Generals, the gameplay between sides is fairly different. Like something like StarCraft, each side has its own unique mechanics and its own unique, I'm assuming, general powers will be in this game as well, where you get sort of special attacks that you can set down on the field of play. So yeah, I mean, what we've seen so far, it's not much, but it looks really good. It's coming in 2013, and for a lot more on Generals 2, just head over to IGN.com.